Okay, so thank you all for coming. Um, this is like I said, this is something that I did for my club, and it was really well received. So it would be I feel like it would be a waste to never like show others how I take pictures because I feel like in bonsai everything's a rabbit hole, right? Bonsai is a rabbit hole. Kusamono is a rabbit hole. uh, watercoloring or whatever is a rabbit hole. Photography is a rabbit hole. So I definitely felt that um, earlier on, I got really into it, and I really enjoy taking photos of trees because it showed that it can be very helpful in all aspects, but some of the helpfulness comes in like design, right? So I've learned that it's it's definitely more helpful in more ways than not. So I just continued and followed through with like buying like a DSLR, definitely going down that rabbit hole. So, but hey, nothing I have is like super expensive. Yes, I know DSLRs are expensive, but you can buy the cheapest DSLR, buy the cheapest lens, and still be able to achieve, taking good pictures because good lighting is important. And as you take more and more pictures of your trees, it just becomes a habit. Document all your stuff better. So okay, yeah, this is just my guide and my experience on how to photograph your trees. So we have to first and foremost ask this general question of why portraits are important. And according to Alison Smith, who is the chief curator at the National Portrait Gallery in London, England, portraiture stands apart from other genres of art as it marks the intersection between portrait, biography, and history. They are more than artworks. When people look at portraits, they think they're encountering that person. So I feel like everybody has their own idea of a portrait that they like the most. And for me, um, it's not the most famous one, but it's less common. But it's the girl with the pearl earring, painted by Johannes Vermeer in 1665. It's currently hanging in The Hague, in the Netherlands. Um, so if you look at her, how she's positioned is kind of like how she looks like in the painting. She's not painted on center. She's off to a corner. Why? Why? One, why? And uh, when you look at her, you probably want to also ask her like, who are you? Who is this girl? And who is she looking at? And why is she looking at the person so intently? And what's with the hairdo, right? And why the pearl earring? And so you ask all these questions, and it's just you just want to like reach out and just really be like, give me all your secrets. Um, in bonsai, is there relevance? Definitely. Um, Bonsai is no different. There is a story to tell. We just tell it differently. We photograph our bonsai to tell a story many years in the making. For me, I think of taking a picture of a bonsai tree at a point in time is like a pixel of a final picture. The more pictures you take, the more pixels you add. If you're looking at a picture of a tree, we look intently and wonder what were its struggles? What was its origin story? How did it get here? What was the inspiration? How was it achieved? And what are its flaws? So, is there an equivalent to the girl with the pearl earring? Uh, a and I would say yes. And the one that I do find very similar, I would say, because it's probably really well documented, is the literati Japanese black pine in the Bonsai Museum in DC. And it is this tree. It is donated by Stanley Chin. And, because of the curator being able to document this tree by taking before and after pictures, we we're very fortunate to have pictures that span back 20 years. So you can really see how the tree looked like today, how it looked like a few years ago, another few years, a few years, another few years, another milestone, another change, and so on and so forth back until 2002. So you can see the tree is completely different. It's the back of today's front. And lots of stuff has been omitted. Candle pruning has, been underway. And yeah, I mean, it really goes to show that there is quite a bit of, done to this tree. So why do we photograph our trees then? Well, first and foremost, it is to keep a record, a before and after to remind us of what changed and what decisions were made. So, for instance, a significant style change, my own personal example, would be this procumbens, changing to this, planting angle change from this to this, changing of foliage, grafting from this, which is this was a past Kokufu submission. You can see how the lower right grafted juniper is Shinpaku juniper foliage is different because it's more mature than the grafted Shinpaku juniper on the upper left corner. So through time, you get this, and it's just important to really be able to document all this because these are substantial changes. The other reason is to use as a design tool. The camera sees all. Like I mentioned before, what your eyes see in person can trick you because it can omit certain things. While once you take a picture of your tree, that's it. It's right there. So for example, whoops. So for example, you can see how this Hinoki on the left is an older picture, and the Hinoki on the right is a recent picture. This tree belonged to a group member, and when they came over for photos, I took a picture of all the trees that they brought. And this one group member was like, I cannot believe I let the tree go that long without having to do something about the negative space. Because what he did notice was how full the tree is. And what he was going for was more of an ancient look, but he wasn't getting that. So it took a picture to tell him, hey, I need to thin out some spaces. So the other reason is to capture the moment. We capture seasonal changes, like foliage change, to spring flowers, or to remember a tree that's no longer alive. This was a California juniper that is no more, and it was at the museum. A California juniper does not belong in a swamp, so therefore it died. So how do we photograph trees? Well, some of the key factors needed to achieving a good image requires good lighting, as that is the biggest factor, and you can achieve that by having natural lighting or studio lighting, a non-distracting background, which can be a solid color background, which is some sort of fabric, or a blurred background, which I will explain later, and having the right equipment. So it's preferred that you have a DSLR, but camera phones are definitely catching up, and they can take some viable pictures, images, because I mean, I have a Samsung, but I have to say, man, that Apple iPhone, it has like really like superior photo capturing abilities. So yeah, and lastly, it's a good understanding of camera settings. So with that being said, how many people here are actually familiar with uh, you know, ISO, aperture, and shutter speed?
Nope.
Nope.
To a small degree, but
Yeah,
probably
but
Okay.
I know
So
they exist.
okay. So all right, this is going to be a lot of information. I hope I hope you guys can follow. I definitely have a link to share with you guys, but we can go ahead and start with ISO. ISO stands for the International Standards Organization, and it is the sensitivity to light on film or the sensor. So ISO is one of three legs of the exposure triangle used to make sense of what goes into determining an exposure or a picture. So, what is ISO and how it affects your picture quality? Well, first you have to understand how is it measured. Well, it's measured in value that is as low as 100 and can be as high as like 32,000. Okay, and a higher ISO means it's more sensitive to light, but it's more noise, and therefore the quality of the image deteriorates, but it results in a brighter image. A low ISO is less sensitive to light, it's less noise, therefore resulting in a more like a higher quality of image, but it's a darker image. So as you can see, the example of the Empire State Building here, a low ISO of 100 versus a 3200 ISO value, you can see how it's a cleaner image on the left and a noisier image on the right. Um, so there are good and bad there's pros and cons to having both of these, right? Because you'd have to ask, if ISO 100 is going to be good and results in the cleanest image, why the hell do we have 3200 ISO? Well, here's why. I dabble in astrophotography, and having a high ISO is perfect for imaging the sky. And the sky is full of stars, so a noisy picture is okay because we have programs these days that can take away all the noise but keep all the stars. But you need the information from the stars to clean up the image. The low ISO is used in a very bright environment, like the second picture of this person standing in front of a mountainscape. Seems to be cloudless, kind of, but it's just super bright, and therefore you need to lower the ISO to be able to capture this image. Make sense? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. uh, Shutter speed is the speed of the camera shutter that can be either quick or slow. Therefore, it can be open for a brief time or open for a long time. A quick shutter speed lets in as little light as possible, while a slower shutter speed lets in the most amount of light possible. So how is it measured? It's measured in seconds to fractions of a second, so which ranges from as low as 30 seconds all the way to 1/2000th of a second. High shutter speed results in a darker image, typically used in a brighter lighting scenario. It can be used to image fast objects with less blurring, therefore resulting in a sharper image. Basically what it does is it freezes the image, the subject. A lower shutter speed results in a lighter image, used typically in dimmer lighting scenarios, or record the passage of time. Have you guys ever seen pictures of waterfalls where it's like a stream of water? It's not a where you can see define individual droplets of water or whatever, but it's literally just a cascade of
like a motion blur of water.
basically it. That's what a low shutter speed can do. So it can still image objects in dim lighting scenarios. However, it needs a longer exposure time. Therefore, it needs things to not move. And thankfully for us, Bonsai don't move, I hope. So
Wait, David, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So I know shutter speed's really important for those manual old cameras that use light to develop, right? How does this apply to digital media? Like, because I just feel like digital media will just cancel out all of those
Yes,
movements.
but you still have a sensor. So in mirrorless DSLRs, you still have a sensor in the actual camera and still collecting light. So it is still very
Okay.
important. Yeah. So yeah,
I
like
see.
that aspect has never gone away. It's just
Mhm.
redefined in a different
Oh,
situation. Yeah. So you
I
can
see. I see.
so you can see how 1/1000th of a second can image a clearer image versus a half a second where the person is, basically in blurry, basically. So here's
Yeah.
an example of a shoot. What did I say this was? Oh, a lower shutter speed. This is a higher shutter speed. As you can see, you take a picture of the Elizabeth Tower, and it's probably like maybe 5 seconds, 5 or 6 seconds. You can see the passage of time by this. I guess this is a bus that came through, but the image behind the background is stationary, so that's why you can still see a very defined and clear image of the back versus having seen no cars except light versus a fast shutter speed, being able to photograph this hummingbird, take note of the wing, the fastest the fastest component of a hummingbird. This basically freezes the wing in time. It just doesn't, freezes the object. Therefore, um, uh, it can be useful in certain aspects, in different scenarios. I think aperture is kind of the more confusing one. But the aperture is the opening controlled by the lens, which light can be let through to enter the camera. The opening can be either very small or very large. So as you can see here, this is a large opening versus a super, super small aperture here. So how is it measured? Well, it's measured in f-stops, which can range from 1.4, which is the widest, to 32, which is the narrowest. A low f-stop results in a brighter image. Focus is usually on the subject directly in front of with none of the background in focus, which results in a shallow depth of field. A high f-stop, which is a narrow aperture, results in a darker image, focusing on the subject directly as well as the background with everything in focus, which results in a larger depth of field. So here's some example. As you can see, this is a Photoshop image. Maybe I shouldn't have used this one, but as you can see, this person here standing in front with a lower f-stop. You can see the person in front, but you can't really see much of the background. Versus taking a photo of landscape, and you have foreground and background subjects, you want to capture everything. So therefore, you need to have a higher f-stop. So basically, it's super not easy at first. It will take time to learn. This is these are the three legs of good imaging. But what I will say is there will be. It's kind of contradictory. I don't know if you noticed, but I've said, yeah, a lower f-stop will give you a a brighter image, or a higher ISO will give you a brighter image. So all these things, they kind of it's like a check and balance. It kind of contradicts each other. So that's why you really need to have a good idea of what these different parameters can do for you, and the only way you can do that is to just learn these various settings and just commit it to memory and just take a shit ton of pictures. So yeah, that's the best way to do it, and you can do that with your phone camera. You don't need a DSLR to do this, because there are actual manual modes that can be very helpful. Okay, so that was a lot. Were there any questions before I actually go into the meat of the presentation?
You mentioned the mirrorless cameras, because I have like a mirrorless camera with a portrait lens,
Yes.
As well as the kind of the more like generic lens it came with. You mentioned like, well, DSLR is kind of the no-brainer, like the best in class, but between phone and the mirrorless, I kind of at this point, I'm using my phone more often because it's just way more fucking convenient.
Yes, very yes.
so-
Have you
So,
have anyone seen the graph? I don't know if you guys have seen. There's a graph that shows the emergence of the smartphone and what happened to DSLR cameras. So yeah, it's actually kind of sad because you have the DSLR pretty high up on the graph. And as it's kind of constantly moving through time, the emergence of the smartphone is low at first, but has this very steep incline upwards, trending positively upwards. And then when the two meet, the DSLR immediately drops to like the lowest in ever. So yeah, I still consider DSLR to be preferred, but like I said, I think camera phones is just so much more convenient, and they have caught up considerably. So you're absolutely right about just having a phone camera handy.
yes.
Oh, go ahead.
No, no, good.
Oh, I was just gonna say they're so much more convenient, but there's still the physics problem of the phone sensor, the aperture and everything is like, a fraction of the size of your SLR or
Yes.
even a mirrorless, or even I don't even know if they make digital cameras. I'm sure they do make digital cameras anymore in like the old school like 35 millimeter format,
Uh
the point and shoot types.
huh.
Anyway, all those things combined, it's like you they can do a lot of tricks in software, but there's still sort of a physics problem on just capturing light that you can't get on a cell phone.
You're right.
Yeah.
You'll get
I
You're
think it's
definitely
I think it's worth mentioning too that for our purposes, specifically photographing bonsai, a lot of this is I think the reason why a lot of tree photography comes out looking relatively flat if you do it with a phone camera is because Apple and Samsung are training they're training algorithms to work on to simulate depth of field, but they're training it for humans. They're not
Yes.
training it for trees.
Yes.
So that's why like portrait mode on a phone won't capture a tree in the same or is less likely to capture a tree in the same detail as having an actual physical lens that gives you that depth of field.
Yeah, so for practical application, so obviously, like taking a lot of pictures with and tweaking with settings and the lighting setup and all that. My instinct is that it's probably worthwhile to break out the mirrorless and focus on that initially and see how far I can take that, rather than trying to dig around with the phone camera.
Yeah.
Or for portrait photography of a bonsai.
If you can't have a dedicated area for it, I think there's some benefit to downloading a camera app on your phone that gives you more control to just because it'll help you get familiar with the triangle, with the relationship of ISO and shutter speed and stuff like that. But if you can't have a dedicated like photography area for it, just breaking it out like at the beginning of spring, midsummer, end of the season, like at specific points during the tree's life cycle and doing like a mass documentation of everything with that high quality. That's what I've done at least.
Yep. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of like trial and error, and like like many of you guys have said, it's just going out there, taking a crap ton of pictures, just making sure you're able to be like in a setting where you're like, oh wow, it's sunny. I need to lower all my all my settings to make sure that I account for the the brightness, because it's super easy to just get overexposed pictures. So yeah, but yes, but also thankfully that there are pretty powerful photo editing apps out there that will help with that. So yeah, I'll get to those later. So okay,
Thank you.
yeah, photographing bonsai. I am gonna go into outdoor and indoor, or rather outdoor and studio. So when I take pictures of bonsai outdoors, I tend to go less formal. And I will break out like my telephoto lens, and I'll just like take like super far shots and just be able to like candidly take pictures of trees. I mean, like, not that they're gonna notice, but in certain ways where other stuff are framing the tree. You know what I mean? So it doesn't need to be as formal as front, center, and having a kusamono or something like that. So photos shot in various natural lighting scenarios can definitely influence the mood, which can then influence the viewer. So my example of this is when I went to the Omiya Bonsai Museum. Um, uh, I took this picture in a lighting scenario where it's kind of cloudy, kind of patchy, with a dappered sun, which kind of added to this warm light tone. And the focus of this tree, the focus of this picture of the tree is in the middle. That's kind of framed by the blurred tree in front and the blurred tree in the back. So if I had all of this in focus, which is a higher f-stop, I would have captured everything. But then there would be nothing to look at. It'd be too busy. So by focusing on the middle of the tree and then having the blurred front and the blurred background, it's less interesting to kind of focus in on the background. Therefore, your main attention is drawn to the middle, the middle tree. And what I have found is that it's kind of like telling a story with the lighting. So, for instance, this was taken in February. This is a ume that is literally about to pop with all of its flowers. It's gonna just explode everywhere, right? And it's a warmer tone. It's kind of like almost edging on to be like, okay, all the flowers is just gonna explode soon, right? Compared to this next picture, which was taken literally like 20 feet away. Same lighting situation, but the positioning is behind a grove of bamboo. Now, it's pretty much the same framing, centering, and all that, but the background here, the bamboo, is much darker. Therefore, if I didn't blur it out, if I blurred it out, cool, whatever, didn't matter. The contrast of the tree in front and the background behind really brings this tree forward. And this tree was definitely probably treated with lime sulfur, diluted lime sulfur, which made it a lot more bone white. So definitely made this setting, made the mood colder. It's February, all the leaves fell off, this quince, it literally still has snow on the soil surface. So it made for rather contrasting, photos of the two. And then here are the other examples of outdoor bonsai. So again, framing in the tree at the museum, up close, centering the focus on the needles and blurring out the background, taking it from afar, not exactly from the front, having other trees frame the subject, using foreground fenestrations to kind of like frame the tree. And this is actually one of my more favorite pictures, but you can't see the whole tree because of the windows, but it's literally there. It's a rather creepy shot too. It's just be kind of like creeping on this tree from behind a window. Okay, so then we go into photographing trees in a studio. So light is super important. So if you can invest in studio lights, they're not expensive. You can buy them on Amazon. You just need to have some good light bulbs. So for me, in my basement, I moved my photography area from the third floor office to the basement, which is closer to the garden. I used to lug trees 3 floors up to take pictures. I didn't have a light. By the time I got home, there was no natural lighting because I have a 3 window bay in the office, so I got a ton of light of natural lighting. So So I would opt, I would basically take pictures in the evening in the most ridiculous way. And I utilize the ceiling. Um, so as you can see here, most ceilings are white. I don't know if if people like to paint ceilings in other colors, but they really should be white. But I would lug my trees upstairs, put my uh, phone camera with the flashlight on the floor, have it like beam up on the ceiling, and then reflect all that light as diffuse light, and then set my camera to take a 20 picture exposure of trees. And this was the result. This is complete pitch like darkness, but I was able to capture, you know, photos of my trees this way. I should have bought a light. I don't know why, but this was kind of cool. Um, but yeah.
You took the 20 exposures because you then combined them together and
No, I just took one picture, and this was it.
okay.
Yeah. I don't know why I went through all that. It was just I don't know. It was I was new. And then you
Sometimes doing things the hard way will make you appreciate how easy it gets.
yeah. So moving the studio to the basement, I got a an ironed out canvas from Joann's, and got two studio lights with 180-watt equivalent LED light bulbs in the shape of a corn cob. Basically, this bulb would emanate light from all directions. Inside the studio light container, it would focus and redirect all the light forward through a frosted plastic vellum like sheet. So it's diffuse light rather than just harsh light. And then the bonsai, work table, turntable, whatever, that's adjustable, so you can adjust the your subject up and down. So this is when the studio wasn't in use, but when it is in use, it looks like this. I like to point the light at the tree at a crisscross angle, so that it chases the shadows away. With the object that's at least 3 feet away from the background, there is practically no shadow. The camera is also set far back enough without straining the lens capabilities, because sometimes when you extend your camera lens, that's a longer focal length. Therefore, the camera, the image can be darker, but you can have your settings to adjust that. A tripod is definitely essential to eliminate any movement if you need to do long exposure. So the result of this is this. So when you have your when you see when I took the picture with my phone camera, you can clearly see that the background is very light because of all the reflected light. But in the camera, when you work the ISO, when you work the shutter speed, when you work with the aperture, you can get a very dark background, and that's what I'm always after. I'm always after a dark background. Other things that I like to do is I like to grab more than what I need. Getting more of the background allows you to crop the image to your liking. It's generally not great to just focus in on the subject, because what if you needed more, right? So the picture on the right is cropped using the yellow border on the left. Centering and leveling the tree is very important too, because if you're looking directly at the tree, um, but you're like leaning to the left or leaning to the right, you're not really center, right? And then if your tripod is too high, you could also not be level. So a lot of this can be kind of corrected, but if you center your tree and your camera and everything, there's less correction that needs to be made. So here's an example of that. I actually took this example from Bonsai Tonight. So here's a view of an azalea from below. This is too low. This is slightly too low. This is the perfect shot. This is a little too high. This is too high. And this is just wrong. So as you can see.
Can you go back to the just right one, the perfect shot one? It is slightly above
It
because
is
you're seeing.
slightly above. Yes. Right there.
Thank you.
All right. More centering stuff. This is again at least for the stands and whatever you're also trying to photograph. When you're photographing one thing, and this is again just preference. I typically like to make sure that everything is on center and everything is, maybe this isn't good, but symmetrical. Because isn't the thing that we don't want things to look symmetrical, but then things tend to look better with symmetry. In terms
We
of
want we want the stand, we want the pot, and everything to be symmetrical. Tree to
Right.
be asymmetrical.
Yes. So
But you want everything else to be symmetrical so that it shows off the asymmetry of the tree.
exactly. So there are reference points that I like to use, and typically what I like to use the stand's legs to be able to tell if everything is on center. The picture on the left has equidistant legs. You can see all four legs; they're all equidistant. The picture on the right is you still see four legs, but they're not equidistant. So to me, it's kind of like the slightly turned manhole cover with the paint that's not really on the paint on the road. Like that's what that's what infuriates me. Okay, so this is the portion when we talk about using your phone camera. So if you don't have a DSLR, you're absolutely fine to use your phone. The noticeable difference here is that if you look on, if you look at these two pictures, the picture on the right is taken with a DSLR versus a phone camera picture on the left. There is just more information in the DSLR camera in that photo versus your phone camera. Your sharps are sharper, your softs are softer, and then there's just more information overall. When I look at a phone camera image, I just see it's super flat. And that was discussed before, right? That's what we talked about earlier. So, let me see if I can. Okay. Here is a video of how I take my phone camera pictures if I ever need to take very quick pictures. I actually got new lights, so this is just a screen recording of me just showing these are the lights, and that's the subject, and it's simple, easy, quick snap, and that's it. Then you have a video of me going through the pro mode to calibrate the settings, the ISO, the shutter speed, and all that to get a more, a more, I guess, a more clearer picture, a less overexposed picture. So go into pro mode. I don't generally change the temperature too much. I typically keep it at around 49,000 to 4,900 to like 5,000, and then I just mess with the shutter speed and the ISO to get a darker background, and I will then take a darker image because I don't use flash, and then I go back in using a photo editing software to just edit away, make the background darker, make the ambient light, make the tree come back out from the dark settings.
You mentioned the 4900 on the camera settings. With the lights, like, I know there's like warm and
Yes.
and like daylight and stuff like that. Like what do you recommend for photography?
I typically recommend staying within the 5000, because that's kind of where it's not too warm and it's not too cool. So that's kind of where I feel like that's where the auto light balance kind of sets you. So I typically like to be there.
Oh, to add on to that, because I deal with this a lot more in film. Generally speaking, yeah, like 5,000 Kelvin is what is generally considered quote unquote neutral lighting. If you go if your purpose is, this is where it gets kind of in like what's the purpose of the photo. If the purpose of the photo is documentation, like you want the most detail and the most accurate representation of the tree as it is for for your own purposes, then keeping a more neutral light is going to be more advantageous.
Yes.
But like as we saw in the outdoor photography, like changing the temperature, the color temperature to a warmer color or a cooler, warmer, cooler color temperature can drastically change the character of the photo and communicate something different. So if you're taking it to impart a sense of drama, if you will, or trying to take dramatic photos, then that's I think the time to play with a lot of the different color temperatures.
Right. What I noticed is when I go into photo editing software, which is the next video, I use the Samsung uh, photo editing software. What it does is sometimes it can change the temperature, and I don't know why, but it just does. It's the only photo editing software that does that, and it makes it just turns the tree into funky colors, and you have to just bring back the saturation and the temperature and all that stuff. So this is the InPhone photo editing software. I rotate the image, I crop the image, and then play with the lighting balance. And the overall brightness, and what I use most is contrast. I know it really darkens the image, but and this is where it's kind of like easier with better photo editing software and not just the phone, the InPhone's photo editing software, because I don't know, it's just more powerful. This one is just not as great, but as you can see, I'm going through and I have to crank up like a lot of the brightness or a lot of the contrast, or fine tune it with like the shadows, and then come back and hit it with like a complete like a harder saturation value, just to bring the color back. So so yeah. So that's the Samsung InPhone. So you can see that's the image that results. Then I go into, have anyone heard of Google Snapseed?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I've used it a little bit. It's been a while.
Snapseed I have found is very good. Even with like phone photos, it's very useful, and there's a ton of stuff that you can do. But I've the next video I'm showing you is Snapseed editing a DSLR image, and it's just easier. There's less to do. So same tree, with taken by the DSLR. It's kind of like pretty intuitive. There's a lot of stuff that you can choose and pick from, but um, it's just so much easier using a DSLR image. That's all. But what it does have here is it does have this setting called ambience, and what it does is it brings the whatever is lit, like foliage, trunk, whatever. if you don't want anything else to be brought up, if you have your black background or your solid dark background, with the ambient says it brings forward all the lit parts, which is good because then it doesn't bring any of the dark parts back up to the values where you don't want them to be.
That's a nice little juniper.
Thanks. Okay, and next is Snapseed with a camera photo. I found that messing with shadow is like a fine tuning. It's like fine tuning an instrument versus like hard tuning an instrument. So if you're trying to if you're messing with contrast and you use shadow, it kind of brings everything back from it being too dark. And lastly, this is another DSLR photo editing where I work with vignettes. I'm cropping the image. What I like about Snapseed is that the rotating value is more sensitive. You know, I don't know if you ever use the rotating value for the feature in other photo editing software, but it sometimes it goes from like 1 to 2 to 3. But the Snapseed goes in increments of like 0.05. So you can really like turn something very, very minutely, and you can still capture, you can make things straighter, basically.
Do you tend to follow any like proportion guidelines, like the 2/3 rule or anything like that?
Not really. If you take a look on the lower left-hand corner, you can kind of see that there's a there's a I forgot what that's called. Um, it's kind of like a graph of what's on the like what the values of the images if it's and I don't know. There's a pattern that I like to see. If I arrive there at that pattern of that graph, then I know that that's a nicely exposed, well balanced picture. Does that make sense? Maybe I'll go
Where
back.
in the screen?
I'll go back here. Take a look at this.
Uh-huh.
It changes as the values change.
Okay.
So
Okay.
generally, if I'm within a certain parameter or a shape that is similar to this shape, I know that the picture is proportionately balanced.
Gotcha. Okay. I see.
And then this is where I work with vignettes. This is completely your preference. I just like to add on more darkness to the edges. I use this to make the stand kind of like emerge from the darkness, rather than have its legs just kind of stop. You know what I mean? So yeah. Oh,
What
sorry.
app is this again?
Snapseed.
Snapseed.
I will say as well for iPad folks, or if you have like a tablet, I haven't used it on phone, but Adobe's Photoshop Express is phenomenal. You can actually use like a pen or a stylus to pick an effect like brightness and draw areas
Really?
of
Wow.
like literally draw in areas of like you want to brighten up this area, you draw a big circle, fill it in, and it just applies brightness to that one area.
It's good to know.
Let's see if I can find
Is
some.
is it free?
There is a free version that gets you most of the like tools, but otherwise it's like $4.99 a month. But but there's no annual subscription or anything like that, so you could just get it once for $5, do all your editing, and then cancel it, which is what I usually do.
Okay. Okay. Well, here are the other applications that I use, but Snapseed is the main one that I go to. Instagram has a very nice photo editing software. It's really simple, but the only problem is once you get it all ready, it 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 goes into posting it on the platform, and it compresses your image. There's no way to save, and when it does save, it's a compressed image. So yeah. So it's just efficient if you're going to post something onto Instagram. Pixlr is a good little tool that I use to do collages. So if I have like a bunch of pictures that I've taken through time, then I want to kind of see them where like how a tree progresses. I use Pixlr to show that. Microsoft Photo Editor, the built-in photo editing software, it's good. It's okay, but it's not great, but it's there. So here's that Pixlr thing I was talking about. You can pick 9 images, and you can add text. You can do all this, documentation stuff, and it's very helpful. So somebody asked me during the presentation at the club, where they said, "Have you ever heard of Black 3.0?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I definitely heard of that. I really wanted to buy Black 3.0 and just paint like a wall." But um, Black 3. Is anyone familiar with Black 3.0?
Wow.
No.
I am. I've almost bought it like 3 times.
Okay.
I have no reason to have it.
Exactly. I don't either. But Ira, Black 3.0 is the answer to Vanta Black. Have you heard of Vanta Black?
Oh, it's
No.
the paint, right?
Yeah. Vanta Black is you've probably seen images of it where like it's like a really like caustic paint that you can like coat an object with, and it absorbs like some godly amount of like light, like 99.9% of light. So it just looks like a black void. You can't see shapes, you can't see anything. So the artist who a artist bought the rights to it, so no other artist can use it. So the art community was
Okay.
like,
Okay. Yeah.
you've heard of it, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's Black 3.0. It's not as great because I think Black 3.0 is like 99.6%. But there is another paint called Muso Black. Has anyone heard of that?
9.
Okay.
That one's new to me.
Okay. Um, think of this. I'm holding on to a container. What is the? Oh, 2 ounces. 2 ounces of this Muso Black, and I think it was $200. And you can only get, and you have to cover this thing in like multiple layers. So I thought about it. I was like, man, I really want something that can absorb all this light, and I don't need to use like any more fabric. I don't need to, do any more with like, like photo editing where I just take out most of the trees features with the contrast or the shadows or whatever, so I can like really crank up the lights and all that stuff. Yeah, it was completely like impossible to to budget and actually buy that paint, because I think it was like to paint a 6 foot by 8 foot piece of whatever, I think was close to like $1,000. There's just no
Right.
reason to do that. But
I was
yeah,
gonna say that'd be really useful for
yes.
painting,
And
because on the wall behind you, you want it to be dark so that it doesn't reflect any light onto the painting and mess up your perception of light values.
do you know
So,
who teases like that the dark background? Sergio does.
uh-huh.
Sergio
Yeah, it does.
teases you with the black background, because you know what it is? His black background. I asked him one time, I said, I need to know, how the hell do you get your background so black? Like, what do you do? Your edges are so clean. And he was like, you know what? It's the secret is um it's my backyard. Just unlit. He just opens his garage
Wow.
and he, yeah, like here's the picture. So that's just the length of his backyard that has no light. And he just shines the studio lights on the tree, and then everything else is just pitch blackness.
It's the advantage of living in the middle of nowhere.
Yes. And then working the phone like settings, it's practically nothing. You can't, like, I tried taking one of his pictures and like reverse engineer it and just take out like like raise the exposure and everything. You can't see a thing. It's almost like it's a black hole. So yeah.
His backyard is Vanta Black.
And
You can get a lot closer to, if you have, I think this is just one of those things where it's not super feasible all the time, but like generally speaking, if you have a black background, the farther away your background is, the easier it is to get that flat black
right.
effect,
Right.
because you have the light dispersion. So like if you can commandeer like an entire room and board up all the windows, or if you have like a double a double depth garage or something like that, you could probably get close.
Yeah. But here's the link that I wanted to share with you. So it's the Canon website, and can you see this?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, you see aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. If you change the parameters, and here's a random parameter, take a picture. It tells you, it shows you the picture that you've taken, and it tells you on the bottom what it lacks. So I think this will be a very good learning tool for those who want to just see like what these three parameters can do. So do another one. Yeah, there you go. Too exposed, and it tells you your settings here. Yeah, so that's all. That's all I have. I hope it was informative.
So I had a question. With my portrait lens, like I can play with the bokeh, like bokeh,
Mm-hmm.
and but I don't really see that in any of your photos. Like, what are your for taking moments in time, documenting like the progress of my trees and kind of the more traditional
Mm-hmm.
bonsai portraits. What should I know that you just need to play with it, but like, what do you use that at all in photography? And is it more just artistic rather than trying to, capture the moment in time?
I actually got a chance to play with a portrait lens, and my sister's boyfriend has one, and I guess it's unfamiliar to me, but every time I take a picture of it, with it, of my trees, there are certain parts that get blurred out, and it almost looks strange to me, because it only captures like the front of the tree. Everything else kind of starts to get like like to be in like less focus. Is that what you're explaining? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, that's
yeah?
that. Yeah, I was kind of just curious, like, if with that with that portrait's lens, like it's good of taking a portrait of, like, someone on a sunny day in a crowd or something, right?
Yeah,
But like,
it's
um,
not as it's not common, I would say, in bonsai, because I don't know. I'm looking at I guess kokufu books and other bonsai
yeah, yeah,
printed
yeah,
material,
yeah,
and I don't see that, so that's why,
right.
like, when I had used it, I was like, oh man, that's weird. Branches are blurred out, and it doesn't work, so
I think it's tricky to get because of the relationship that portrait lenses have with the like size of the lens and the depth of field. A it's really hard to get a tree simultaneously to be far enough away to get the entire tree in the shot, but also stay within the relatively narrow depth of field that portrait lenses generally give. Because I have I think it's a 40 millimeter fixed lens, which is like a pretty common portrait lens, and like you can't use it for trees because if I want all the branches in focus, I can't, unless it's a really small tree. You can't get everything in the shot and in focus at the same time.
right, right.
You mentioned the telephoto lens, like using that heavily. Is that more for like garden photography and
Yes.
stuff like that? Okay.
Yes, and you need to be careful with telephoto lens, because it's so long. You have to lower your ISO. No, sorry, not your ISO. Lower your I don't touch ISO really ever, but shutter speed. Um, if you have to expose, lower the shutter speed using the telephoto, there's a lot more shakiness. Yeah. So what looks good, like, oh, my viewfinder says it, I took the image and I look at it and it looks good, but then once you go back to your computer and you actually take a look at it, it's very, very shaky. That's the only, warning, whatever. All right, well, thank you for joining.
Wow,
This,
thank
this,
you,
this,
man. That was awesome.
yeah, this has
Yeah,
been incredible. Thank you very much.
you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Thanks again.
No problem.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.